phone rings in an empty apartment, once, twice, three times, nobody answers. The living room is dark, curtains half drawn, a coffee mug sitting cold on the counter like someone left in a hurry. And never came back. On the fourth ring, the call drops to voicemail. And a woman's voice fills the silence. Daniel, it's me. If anything happens to me, check my laptop, please. I static swallows the rest. The message ends. The apartment stays empty. And somewhere across the world, a man presses replay for the 100th time. Trying to find something, anything in those 7 seconds of sound. That man is Daniel Ortiz. And the woman on the other end of that voicemail is the woman he was supposed to marry. Her name was Maya Coleman, 31 years old, an ER nurse at one of Atlanta's busiest hospitals, the kind of woman who could hold a stranger's hand through the worst night of their life and still come home with enough love left over for everyone around her. She grew up 20 minutes from where she worked, went to nursing school on a scholarship she was proud of for the rest of her life, and met Daniel her sophomore year of college in a library of all places, both of them reaching for the same worn copy of a textbook neither of them really wanted to read. They dated for 8 years. Before he proposed, everyone said it was about time. Maya's mother cried. Daniel's friends joked that he finally caught up to what everyone already knew, that they were meant for each other for a long time. That was the whole story. Ordinary, steady, safe. Maya worked 12-hour shifts that left her exhausted, but never bitter. She came home smelling like hospital antiseptic and complained about difficult doctors and impossible patients, and Daniel would have dinner waiting, and they'd fall asleep on the couch more nights than either of them wanted to admit. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Then 3 months after moving to Dubai, a decision that still didn't make sense to the people who loved her. Maya Coleman disappeared. No calls, no messages, no explanation, just silence halfway across the world, and a voicemail that arrived on Daniel's phone weeks after she'd already stopped answering his. He doesn't remember exactly when he started replaying it obsessively. Maybe it was the first night he realized she wasn't calling back. Maybe it was after her mother phoned him, voice shaking, asking if he'd heard from her. All he knows is that now, sitting alone in the apartment they once talked about renting together, phone screen glowing in the dark, he can't stop listening. If anything happens to me, check my laptop. He doesn't know what she meant. He doesn't know what she was running from or running to. He only knows the woman he loved for 8 years said those words in a tone he'd never heard from her before. Not scared, exactly, careful, like she was choosing every word because she might not get the chance to choose more. Daniel sets the phone down, picks it up again, and presses play to understand what happened to Maya. You have to go back, not to Dubai, not to the silence. Year earlier, when her biggest problem was finding 30 minutes to eat lunch between codes in the ER back then, Maya's life looked exactly like the kind of life people say they want: a small apartment in Midtown Atlanta, 1-bedroom, walls covered in photos from nursing school graduation, a bookshelf stacked with paperbacks. She never had time to finish a ring on her left hand. She rarely took off, not even in the shower, not even during a 12-hour shift with her hands buried in latex gloves. Daniel had picked it out himself, spent months saving for it, and every time Maya looked at it, she'd smile, the same soft smile, like she still couldn't quite believe her life had turned out this good. And by most measures it had. She worked nights at the hospital, the kind of shifts that hollow a person out: trauma patients, overdoses, gunshot wounds, the quiet 3 a.m. moments where she'd sit in the break room with a lukewarm coffee, staring at nothing, trying to remember what it felt like to not be tired. She loved the work. She loved knowing that on the worst night of someone's life she could be the calm in the room. But it took something from her too. Every year a little more. I just want something more, she told Daniel one night, curled into his side on their second-hand couch. Not instead of this, just more. You know, he did know. He felt it too in his own way, the quiet ache of being young and tired and responsible, watching other people's lives online looking effortless and bright, while theirs felt like a constant balancing act. But Daniel's answer to that ache was patience: save more, work harder, build it slow together. Maya's answer, though she didn't know it yet, would look very different. It started small: a flyer at the hospital for a private concierge nursing service, the kind that placed nurses with wealthy clients, international families, executives who needed discreet, high-level medical care during visits to the States. The pay was almost triple her hospital's salary, the hours were flexible, and the work, at least on sounded almost glamorous compared to the chaos of the ER. She almost didn't apply. She remembers telling Daniel about it over dinner, half joking, half serious. It's probably nothing, she said. Rich people needing a nurse on standby. Feels a little, I don't know, not me, doesn't hurt to ask, Daniel said, distracted, scrolling through his phone. Extra income. He didn't think much of it, neither did she really. It was just one more shift added to an already exhausting week. One more way to chip away at the wedding fund, the house fund, the someday fund. She got the job 2 weeks later. Her first assignment was simple: monitor an elderly client recovering from surgery at a private residence in Buckhead. Easy money, she said. Barely felt like work. She didn't know yet that this small decision, one extra shift, one flyer she almost threw away, would become the first loose thread in a life that had until now felt completely whole. She didn't know that in a few months, one of those private clients wouldn't be an elderly woman recovering from surgery. He'd be young, wealthy beyond anything she'd ever seen, and he'd be waiting for her halfway across the world in a hospital room that smelled like money instead of medicine. 3 months into the concierge job, Maya's supervisor called with an assignment that felt different from the start. This one's high priority, she said. Private client visiting from overseas, recovering from a minor procedure, but the family wants round-the-clock care while he's in Atlanta. Discretion is Everything you and Maya said yes before she even asked about the pay. The client was staying at a private estate, outside the city gated quiet, the kind of place with more security cameras than windows. When Maya arrived that first morning, a member of the household staff led her through marble hallways she was almost afraid to walk on past art. She couldn't begin to guess the value of until they reached a bedroom suite bigger than her entire apartment. And there he was, Rashid Al-Mansouri, 34 years old. Dressed simply despite the wealth around him, sitting up in bed scrolling through something on his phone like he'd rather be anywhere else. "You must be the nurse who's going to keep me from dying of boredom," he said without looking up. "I'll do my best," Maya said, "though I was told to keep you alive, not entertained." That got his attention. He looked up. And for a second something flickered across his face, surprised maybe that she hadn't softened her tone, the way most people probably did around him. "Fair enough," he said, setting the phone down. "Most people who walk into this room treat me like I'm made of glass or money. Sometimes both. I treat everyone the same," Maya said, checking his chart. "Doesn't matter what house they're in." He smiled at that. It was the practiced camera-ready smile she imagined men like him wore in public. It looked real. Over the next few days, their conversations stretched longer than they needed to. He asked about her life, the hospital, the 12-hour shifts, Daniel, the wedding they hadn't set a date for yet. She learned in pieces about his family empire. He never asked for a father who measured his worth in business deals, a life so full of people that he said quietly one evening, "I don't think anyone in my life has ever asked me how I'm doing without wanting something after him asking." Maya said. He looked at her for a long moment. "I know," he said, "that's what's strange about it," she told herself. It was nothing, just a patient who happened to be lonely and a nurse who happened to be good at listening. That was the job, that was who she was. But there was something in the way he listened back, really listened the way Daniel used to before. Exhaustion and routine wore the edges off of everything that Maya hadn't felt in a long time. Seen, not as a nurse, not as someone's fiancé, not as someone constantly giving pieces of herself away to other people's emergencies. Just seen the morning he was cleared to fly home. Maya walked him out to the private airstrip herself, technically, to complete the handoff paperwork with his medical team. She stood on the tarmac in the early light, watching the private jet gleam under the Atlanta sun, engines already humming, staff loading the last of his things. "Come visit Dubai sometime," Rashid said, half joking, pausing at the base of the stairs. "I'll show you something more interesting than an ER." Maya laughed it off. "I have a wedding to plan." But long after the jet lifted off the runway and disappeared into the sky, she stood there a moment longer than she needed to, watching the empty space where it first text came 2 days after Rashid left Atlanta. "Thank you for taking care of me. Most people forget me the moment I stop being useful to them. You didn't seem like most people." Maya stared at it longer than she meant to before typing back something polite and professional. It felt harmless, a grateful patient, nothing more, but the messages kept coming, not constant, not overwhelming, just enough. A photo of the sunset over the Dubai skyline, a question about her day. A voice note once just to say he'd had a good meeting and thought she'd want to know. She told herself it was friendly. She told herself a lot of things. Then the gifts started. A designer bag left at her apartment door with no note, just a card that said, "For the woman who doesn't ask for anything." Maya tried to send it back. He wouldn't take it. "It's just a gift, Maya," he told her over the phone, laughing softly. "You people in the West make everything so complicated. Where I'm from, generosity isn't a transaction." She wanted to believe that, some part of her did. Daniel noticed the change before she was ready to admit there was one. She'd start typing responses to texts and angle her phone away. She'd get quiet during dinner, distracted somewhere else entirely, even while sitting across from him. "Who keeps texting you?" he asked one night, trying to sound casual and failing. "Just work stuff," Maya said. "Follow up on an old client at 10 p.m. Different time zone, Daniel." Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "I don't ask you to explain every text you get. I'm not trying to start something," he said quietly. "I just feel like you're somewhere else lately, even when you're right here." Maya didn't answer that. She couldn't, not honestly, because he was right, and she didn't yet have the words for where somewhere else actually was. What she didn't tell Daniel, what she barely admitted to herself, was how different it felt talking to Rashid. He didn't complain about being tired. He didn't need her to manage his moods or remind him to pay bills. He asked about her dreams like they mattered more than her schedule, and slowly, carefully, he began saying things that settled into her like warm water. "You're not like the women here, always chasing status, always performing. You're real, it's rare. Does Daniel know how special? Sometimes I don't think people close to us really see us. I don't like how your friends talk about you moving up in life like it's something to be ashamed of. You deserve people who want more for you, not people who want you to stay small." It didn't feel like manipulation. It felt like being understood finally, completely, by someone who saw exactly who she was and never once asked her to be smaller. Bit by bit, without ever raising his voice or making a single demand, Rashid became the person Maya wanted to talk to most. And bit by bit, the people who had known her longest, Daniel, her closest friends from the hospital, even her own mother, started to feel like background noise in a life that was quietly, invisibly being rearranged around a man 3,000 miles away. She didn't notice the walls going up. She only noticed one night, staring at her phone glowing in the dark, that Rashid had just asked her a question she couldn't stop thinking about. "What if you came here just to see? What's stopping you, really? What's stopping you, really?" The question sat with Maya for weeks before she let herself answer it, and when she finally did, it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, the way most life-changing decisions are made alone at 2 in the morning in the blue light of a phone screen, long before anyone else knows it's already happened. She told Daniel on a Sunday. He was making coffee, still in his sleep shirt, humming something under his breath, and Maya stood in the doorway of the kitchen and said the words before she could talk herself out of them. "I think we should call off the engagement." He didn't move for a second. Just stood there, coffee pot in hand, like the sentence hadn't fully reached him yet. "What are you talking about? I need something different, Daniel. I've needed it for a while, I just didn't know how to say it." "Is this about him?" His voice was still calm, but there was something underneath it now, something breaking quietly. "The Sheikh guy, Rashid." Maya didn't answer right away, and that silence answered for her. 8 years, Maya. Daniel set the coffee pot down carefully, like he was afraid of what his hands might do if he didn't. 8 years, and you're going to throw it away for a man you spent a week with? "It's not about him," she said, though even she didn't fully believe it. "It's about me. I feel like I've been sleepwalking through my whole life, and for the first time I feel awake." "You feel awake," Daniel repeated, quiet, hollow. "You have a home, you have people who love you, you have me, and you're telling me that's sleepwalking." Maya didn't shout back, neither did he. That was almost the hardest part. There was no yelling, no dishes thrown, nothing loud enough to make the moment feel as big as it actually was. Just two people standing in a kitchen they'd once planned to grow old in, watching 8 years quietly come apart between them. "I'm sorry," Maya said, and she meant it, even as she packed her life into 2 suitcases 3 days later. Her mother called, voice tight with worry. "You don't know this man, Maya, not really. You know a version of him, the version he wants you to see." Her best friend from the hospital was blunter. "You're really doing this, leaving Daniel, leaving your job, your whole life, for someone you met while he was a patient." Maya heard all of it, and she didn't listen to any of it, because in her mind she wasn't running away from something. She was running toward it, toward a version of herself that felt bigger than 12-hour shifts and a life measured out in careful savings and someday plans. Rashid had shown her a world without limits, and after years of being tired, of being needed by everyone and truly seen by no one, that felt like the only thing that made sense. The morning of her flight, she stood in the kitchen one last time. Her engagement ring sat on the counter, catching the early light, and she looked at it for a long moment before she left it there, not thrown, not angry, just left, like a chapter quietly closing. She picked up her 2 suitcases, walked out the door, and didn't look back. 12 hours later, Maya Coleman landed in Dubai, stepping off the plane into heat and light, and a life she believed with everything in her was about to finally begin. The apartment took Maya's breath away before she even stepped inside. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Persian Gulf, the water so blue it almost looked painted on. Marble floors stretched through every room, cool under her bare feet, polished until they reflected the light like glass. A private elevator opened directly into the living space. Somewhere below, the city glittered, towers of glass and steel rising out of the desert like something out of a dream she hadn't known she was allowed to have. "This is temporary," Rashid told her that first night, arms wrapped around her as they stood at the window. "Just until we find something that's really yours, really ours." For the first few weeks, it felt exactly like the life he'd promised. A driver took her wherever she wanted to go. A housekeeper kept the apartment spotless before Maya could even notice it needed cleaning. There was a woman too, Layla, Rashid's personal assistant, soft-spoken and impeccably dressed, who seemed to appear whenever Maya needed something and disappear just as quickly. "If you need anything," Layla told her the first week, "call me, not the hotel line, me." Maya thanked her. She didn't think much of it, not yet. It was the small things that started to feel strange before the big things did. Maya didn't have her own key card for half the building. She had to be buzzed in by staff who always seemed to know exactly when she was coming and going. She didn't have a work permit, hadn't even thought to ask about one in the rush of leaving Atlanta, which meant she couldn't pick up nursing shifts even if she wanted to. Her days, once packed with 12-hour shifts and constant motion, were suddenly disorientingly empty. "You don't need to work," Rashid said when she brought it up. "Why would you want to hear?" "I liked my work," Maya said. "It was part of who I am." "You're more than a job, Habibti," he said, kissing her forehead like the conversation was already over. She met his family once at a dinner that felt more like an interview. His mother's eyes moved over Maya carefully, politely, taking inventory. His father barely spoke to her at all. Later in the car, Rashid was quiet in a way she hadn't seen before, jaw tight, knuckles pale on the steering wheel. "They don't understand," he said, more to himself than to her. "They never do. Understand what? That I can choose who I want." His voice was sharp, sudden, gone as quickly as it came. "I'm sorry, it's been a long day." Maya let it go. Everyone had bad days. She told herself that, standing in the elevator, watching the numbers climb toward the penthouse that still didn't quite feel like home. That night, she found herself standing at the window again, looking out at the water, the same view that had taken her breath away weeks earlier. It still looked beautiful. But now, for the first time, she noticed something else too: how far below the ground was, how the windows didn't open, how every door in the apartment required someone else's permission to unlock. She thought about Daniel briefly, the way you think about a life you've already left behind, with a small, sharp ache quickly buried. Somewhere in the apartment, she heard Layla's soft footsteps pass her door, pause, then continue on. Maya didn't know yet that the woman who checked on her so gently, so constantly, wasn't just an assistant. She was watching. The truth found Maya on an ordinary afternoon, the way truth often does, sideways, uninvited, through a phone screen she wasn't supposed to be looking at. Rashid had left his tablet on the kitchen counter, still logged into his messages, and Maya only meant to check the time. But a name caught her eye first. Noor, and beneath it a string of messages in Arabic she couldn't fully read except for the parts that didn't need translating: a wedding date, address. Photo of a young woman in an engagement portrait, smiling the practiced smile of someone whose future had already been decided for her. Maya's hands went cold. She confronted him that night, voice shaking, the tablet still open on the table between them like evidence at a trial. Who is she, Rashid? He didn't deny it. That was almost worse than if he had. It's complicated, he said, sitting down slowly, rubbing his temples like she was the one causing him pain. It was arranged years ago. Before I even knew you existed, my family. Your family arranged your marriage and you brought me here anyway. I'm handling it, he said. There's pressure, Maya, business, family, obligations you don't understand. I need time. Time for what? To marry her while I sit in this apartment. He reached for her hand and his voice softened into something practiced, something she was starting to recognize now that she was finally looking for it. You're the one I want, she's just paperwork. Family expectations, you have to trust me. Maya wanted to believe him. That was the part that frightened her most. Even now, some small, exhausted piece of her still wanted to believe him. It was Layla who found her later that night, sitting alone on the balcony, staring out at a view that no longer felt like freedom. You should be careful, Layla said quietly, glancing back toward the apartment before she sat down. What you saw today, there's more you don't know. Tell me, Maya said. Layla hesitated, hands twisting together in her lap. His family controls everything, his money, his position, all of it. The engagement to Noor isn't just tradition, it's business. If he doesn't go through with it, he loses more than he can afford to lose. She paused. Women who come before, they don't usually stay long. His family makes sure of that. What happened to them? Layla's eyes flicked toward the door again, and for a moment she looked more frightened than Maya had ever seen her. I've said enough, please don't tell him we talked. That night, alone in the marble bathroom with the water running to cover the sound, Maya began writing in a small notebook she'd hidden inside a rolled towel in the back of a cabinet. She wrote down everything, the messages, Layla's warning, the strange feeling that had been building in her chest for weeks, the sense that every hallway in this beautiful apartment led back to a door she wasn't allowed to open. If anything happens to me, she wrote, hands shaking slightly, someone needs to know the truth. She heard footsteps outside the bathroom door and quickly slid the notebook back into its hiding place, heart pounding. It was only Rashid, calling her name, asking if she was almost ready for dinner. But Maya sat frozen for a long moment before she answered, suddenly deeply certain of something she couldn't yet prove. She was being watched, and she was running out of time to decide what to do about it. The confrontation Maya had been avoiding for days finally came on a Thursday night over a dinner neither of them touched. I want to talk about Noor, Maya said, setting down her fork. For real this time, no more, it's complicated. Rashid's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level, controlled. There's nothing to talk about. I told you I'm handling it. Layla told me you don't have a choice, that the engagement isn't optional, that it never was. Something shifted in his expression, quick, cold, gone almost as fast as it appeared. Layla should learn to mind her place. Don't, Maya said, standing now. Don't turn this around on her. I want the truth, Rashid. Are you marrying her or not? You don't get to demand anything from me. His voice was still quiet, still calm, but there was an edge underneath it now that made the hair on Maya's arms rise. Do you understand what I've given you? This apartment, this life. You had nothing before me, a small apartment, a fiancé who could barely afford a ring, a job that used you until you were empty. I gave you all of this. I didn't ask you to save me. No, he said, standing stepping closer. But you needed saving, and now you want to stand here and question me, in my country, with no job, no visa of your own, no family within 4,000 miles. He let the words settle, watching her face carefully as they landed. Think very carefully about what you have without me, Maya, because right now the answer is nothing. The room went silent, not the comfortable silence of two people who understood each other, the kind that presses against your chest, that makes the walls feel closer than they were a minute ago. Are you threatening me? Maya's voice came out smaller than she wanted it to. I'm reminding you, Rashid said, of the truth, that's all. He left the room without another word, and Maya stood alone in the marble kitchen, hands shaking, finally seeing with total clarity what she had refused to see for months. This wasn't love. It had never fully been love. It was control dressed up in silk and ocean views, and she had walked into it with her eyes wide open, believing she was choosing freedom. That night, once the apartment had gone quiet, Maya locked herself in the bathroom, turned on the tap, and called Daniel with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. He picked up on the second ring, voice groggy with sleep and thick with surprise. Maya, Daniel, I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears finally breaking free. I'm so sorry for everything. I made a mistake, a huge mistake, and I don't know what to do. I need help getting home. I don't have my passport. I don't have money. That's mine. I don't. Slow down, Daniel said, suddenly wide awake. Tell me what's going on. Are you safe right now, Maya? I don't know, she said. I don't think I am. I need you to. The line crackled, hissed, and went dead. Maya stared at the phone screen, the call log showing the seconds ticking upward and then abruptly stopping. She tried calling back, nothing. Just silence and the sound of her own breathing, and somewhere beyond the bathroom door, footsteps she couldn't be sure weren't real. She didn't know it yet, but that call, cut short, unfinished, desperate, would be the last time Daniel ever heard her voice. After that night, the call log on Daniel's phone showed nothing new. No missed calls, no texts. Not even the brief, distant messages Maya used to send every week or two, just enough to prove she was still out there, still alive, still technically reachable. Her Instagram, once filled with careful, curated glimpses of her new life, sunsets over the Gulf, a hand model shot of an unfamiliar bracelet, a caption about finally living, went quiet too. No new posts, no stories. The last photo she'd shared sat frozen at the top of her profile, 3 weeks old, already starting to feel like something from another lifetime. Her mother noticed first, she always did. She hasn't called in almost a month, she told Daniel over the phone, her voice tight with the specific fear only a mother carries. That's not like her. Even when things were bad between us, she'd call. Daniel didn't say what he was thinking, that he'd been staring at his phone every night since that final cutoff call, replaying 7 seconds of a trembling apology on a loop he couldn't stop. He didn't tell her mother about the fear in Maya's voice, the way she'd said "I don't think I am" when he asked if she was safe. He didn't know how to say it without sounding like he was accusing someone of something he couldn't prove. Instead, he did the only thing that felt like action instead of helplessness. He started digging. He pulled up old messages, searching for anything he might have missed, names, places, small details Maya had mentioned in passing before the messages between them slowed to almost nothing. He found a flight confirmation buried in an old email thread, an itinerary from months back, the airline and flight number that had first carried her away from him. He didn't know what he was looking for, he just knew he couldn't sit still. It was Maya's mother who finally made the call that changed everything, to a private investigator named Renner, a retired detective with a quiet reputation for finding people who didn't want to be found, and sometimes people who couldn't be found by anyone else. "I need you to find my daughter," she told him, voice steady despite the fear underneath it. "Something's wrong, I can feel it." Renner had heard those words from 100 worried parents before. Most of the time, the missing person turned up fine, embarrassed, distracted, simply overwhelmed by a life they hadn't fully explained to the people back home. He didn't say that to Maya's mother, he just told her he'd start looking. Weeks passed. Renner made calls that went nowhere, sent emails that received polite, empty non-answers from a legal representative claiming to speak for Rashid's family. Daniel checked his phone obsessively, hoping even now for one more message. None came. And somewhere in Dubai, behind a door that required someone else's permission to open, the silence stretched on, heavier, colder, and far more permanent than anyone back in Atlanta yet understood. Renner's investigation hit walls almost immediately. Dubai authorities were polite, professional, and frustratingly slow. Every request for information filtered through layers of bureaucracy that seemed designed to protect the powerful rather than help the missing. Rashid's family had lawyers. They had connections. They had, it seemed, a way of making the right questions disappear before they ever reached the right people. But Renner had spent 30 years learning how to be patient in ways that made other people give up first. It was a small break that finally moved things forward, a tip from a housekeeper at a modest hotel near the marina, miles from the glass towers where Maya had been living. Through a contact who spoke both English and Arabic, Renner learned that a woman matching Maya's description had checked in alone late one night weeks earlier. No luggage, no reservation made in advance, just a woman who paid in cash and asked, quietly, desperately, if the hotel had a computer she could use. She looked frightened, the housekeeper said, according to the translated notes Renner later shared with Maya's mother. Like someone running from something, she didn't sleep, I think. In the morning, she was gone before checkout. That was the last confirmed sighting of Maya Coleman, alive, alone, and clearly trying to disappear from a life that had become something she could no longer survive inside. What happened in the days after that has never been fully, cleanly explained. What the investigation eventually pieced together was this. Maya had left the apartment sometime in the middle of the night, taking nothing but a small bag and the notebook she'd hidden for weeks. Security footage from a service entrance, footage that took Renner and local authorities nearly a month to gain access to, showed her moving quickly, glancing over her shoulder, disappearing into a service stairwell rather than the main lobby. She made it out. For a while at least, she made it out. 3 weeks after that hotel stay, a fisherman working the waters off a quiet stretch of coastline outside the city made a discovery that would end the search Renner had been running for nearly 2 months. The details released to the family were sparse, careful, filtered through translators and officials who chose their words with visible caution. A body recovered from the water. Identification confirmed through dental records days later, after Maya's mother had already collapsed into a chair in her kitchen, phone in hand, unable to say the words out loud to anyone until Daniel arrived and she simply handed him the phone instead. The official report noted the body had been in the water for some time. It noted signs consistent, the report said carefully, with someone who had entered the water under distress, though whether that distress came before or during her final moments remained, frustratingly, agonizingly unclear. No official cause of death was ever fully confirmed to the family's satisfaction. No charges were ever filed. What the report didn't need to explain, what everyone who loved Maya already understood without needing it printed on official paper, was this. A woman who had once run confidently into every burning building, who had held strangers' hands through the worst nights of their lives without flinching, had spent her final days running from something so frightening that the open, uncertain water felt safer than staying. Daniel stood in his kitchen when he got the call, phone pressed to his ear, and felt the floor tilt beneath him in a way he'd never experienced before. Not grief exactly, not yet, just a vast, echoing emptiness where hope had been living for months without him fully realizing it. He didn't cry right away. He just sat down slowly on the floor back against the cabinet and stared at the space on the counter where, months ago, a ring had once caught the morning light. In the months that followed, Renner kept digging, even after the official case had quietly, unofficially closed. He tracked down Layla, who had fled her position weeks after Maya's disappearance, terrified and unwilling to speak on record but willing finally to speak off it. What she confirmed matched the fragments in Maya's hidden notebook, later recovered from a storage locker near the Marina Hotel, a notebook that had somehow survived when so much else hadn't. Maya had discovered in her final weeks that she was never meant to stay. Rashid's engagement to Noor had been finalized quietly while Maya still believed there was a future for the two of them. The family, desperate to avoid scandal before the wedding, had grown increasingly insistent that Maya be handled, Layla's word, translated carefully, chosen with visible discomfort before news of the affair could reach the wrong people. Whether handled meant the pressure that drove Maya to flee in the middle of the night or something more direct was a question no investigation ever fully answered. Jurisdiction complicated everything. Wealth complicated everything further. The family's lawyers argued and continued to argue that Maya's death was a tragic accident, a woman overwhelmed, alone in an unfamiliar country making a desperate and fatal choice. No one was ever formally charged. No courtroom ever heard the full story. The truth in the end cost everything and purchased nothing resembling justice. Daniel visited Maya's grave on a quiet morning almost a year after she'd left for Dubai, the anniversary of nothing in particular, just a day he needed to be there. The headstone was simple, her name and dates carved into gray stone beneath a tree that hadn't fully grown into its shade yet. He sat down in the grass beside it, the way he used to sit beside her on their old couch, and pulled out his phone. He still had the voicemail saved. He'd almost deleted it a dozen times, and every time his thumb had hovered over the button and stopped, he pressed play instead. "Daniel, it's me. If anything happens to me, check my laptop, please." I static, silence. The same 7 seconds he'd listened to so many times he could recite them from memory, but sitting there in the quiet, he finally let himself hear what he'd been too afraid to hear before, not just fear in her voice, but love. She had been trying in the only way she had left to reach back toward the life she'd walked away from, toward home, toward him. "I know," he said softly to the stone, to the quiet, to no one. "I know you're sorry, I forgive you, I just wish you'd come home." Maya's story isn't really about a sheikh or wealth or a country far from home. It's about how easily any of us can mistake being wanted for being valued, how loneliness can make a gilded cage look for a while like freedom. She wasn't foolish. She wasn't careless. She was human, chasing something every person understands, the pull of the feeling of finally being seen. And that longing, twisted in the wrong hands, became the thing that cost her everything. Somewhere a family is still waiting for real answers. A mother still keeps her daughter's old nursing badge in a drawer she can't bring herself to empty. And a man still visits a quiet grave, replaying 7 seconds of static, holding on to the last voice he ever heard her say his name. If this story moved you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow for more true crime stories. Because every story deserves to be remembered, and every voice deserves to be heard.